Opponents of gender-affirming care make a lot of alarmist claims about hormone therapy, to arguing that it sterilises people. And look...
What?
To arguing that it sterilises people.
So it doesn't sterilize people? Alright, so on October 17th, 2022, John Oliver made his main story about what he calls transgender rights. By the way, this video was made unavailable in the UK. I wanted to have made a video response already, but I was busy, and now I saw that Matt Walsh has posted 1 or 2 videos commenting on this. I haven't seen what he has to say yet. I plan to after I make my own video, and I have to say that I disagree with Matt Walsh in almost absolutely everything, and in this issue in particular, I believe that he's part of the problem.
Because I actually believe that for the most part we should guide our boys away, you know, from playing with dolls and guide them to more masculine things.
Well, yeah, Matt, it is precisely because of people like you that many boys who like to play with dolls are led to believe that the only explanation for their personality is that they are in fact girls trapped in a boy's body. But John Oliver's discourse is full of bullcrap rhetoric too, and immature and disingenuous, if not malicious takes. Let's get to it.
Our main story tonight concerns LGBTQ rights.
No, it doesn't. It concerns only T and Q rights. At no point will be talking about same-sex attracted people or their cause for the right to live without discrimination against them for being same-sex attracted.
This is how CBS News covered the existence of gay people in 1967.
Oh, no, there you go, my mistake. You are going to open up with gay people only, just so that you can co-opt these two causes and conflate these two completely different definitions, being homosexual and identifying as transgender.
Specifically, we're going to talk about transgender rights.
There you go.
This year alone, over 100 anti-trans bills have been introduced in state...
No anti-trans bill has been passed. These are bills to protect women-only sports and spaces. They don't harm transgender people past their need to validate their identity in female-only spaces. And they protect children as well.
Aimed at hospitals providing gender-affirming care to youth.
Wait, what? Does this man know what he's talking about? Since when are double mastectomies on teenage girls gender-affirming care? Hospitals doing this are doing surgery on minors, irreversible surgeries on minors. How is this gender-affirming care?
And frustratingly, there are many on the left either complaining about pronoun police.
Well, John, you were policing the pronouns of all those Republicans that you were making fun of at the beginning of your video. Which pronouns have to be respected and which have to be seen as ridiculous? Where's the line?
Some guy wearing a dress and whether he, she, or it can go to and go to the locker room with their daughter, that's not a winning formula for most people.
Wow. It. Michael Bloomberg can fuck all the way off with that shit.
Why? A few seconds on Twitter and you can see several accounts with it pronouns in their bio. Are they less valid? Are you invalidating those people's identities?
But set aside the notion that it is worth sacrificing protections for a vulnerable group to...
What vulnerable group? What vulnerable group is allowed to sing about how they're much better than real women, all naked on stage, banging on a keyboard with their penis, broadcast by national TV, and cancel events and fire people and get people banned from social media? What vulnerable group are you talking about? Because these people you're referring to are definitely not vulnerable.
That it's not actually the left talking about trans rights non-stop. It's Republicans who see an advantage in demagoguing this issue.
John, riddle me this. Which politician in the world sees an advantage in demagoguing an issue that is not popular with the great majority of people that's gonna get them elected? If a politician is supporting a cause, it's because they believe this is what the majority wants, and this is what's gonna get the majority to vote for them.
A few years ago, Vice profiled a girl named Kai Shapley, and just watch how happy she is talking about her hopes for a future until she remembers something that changes her mood.
What would you change about the world if you were president?
Let trans people be free and go to the bathroom they want to go to.
Well, what about letting people be free and go to the candy shop and take all the candy they want without paying? That's a type of freedom too, right? Just spitballing here.
Are you able to use the girls' bathroom at school?
No.
Bathrooms are filthy, disgusting places. No child ever has thrown a tantrum because of a bathroom that they prefer using. without a parent saying anything about the bathroom. A bathroom is a place where you go in, your mom says don't touch anything, you do what you gotta do, and you come out to much more fun stuff that children do, like playing in the park and having ice cream.
And now they just put security guards up for the bathroom security or whatever.
Or whatever. Because of course all the affections and mannerisms of this kid, plus the things this kid is saying, have nothing to do with a parent coaching them on what to say on TV. Of course not. Let's pretend it's not the case at all. These are issues that children spontaneously care about, unassisted by parents. Yeah, sure. Plus security guards for the bathroom? What, to protect the bathroom from this kid entering?
Sure, Jan.
That is brutal. It is so dark, it's genuinely hard to watch.
Yeah, it is, but not for the reasons John Oliver is saying. It's hard to watch because it's really hard to watch a child this age having a parent or two parents or I don't know how many parents telling you that you were born in the wrong body. That's dark. That's the darkness of this scene. That's hard to watch.
18 states have passed laws aimed at protecting youth sports.
Protecting female youth sports, John. Female. That's what they're protecting. You don't see any trans man, transgender boy wanting to play with the actual man. But of course you do. You're going to show a video about that because you have picked the one exception just so that no one can use the argument that it's all about the great majority of women getting hurt by trans-identified male-bodied people wanting to compete in the female category, deliberately cheating in a category where they know they have a biological advantage. Male-bodied people who just want to compete to validate their identity as women. It's not about the sports for them, it's about the validation. These are the people these laws are aiming to keep out of the female category in sports. People who are trolling the competition just to get their validation fill. And of course you know that. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have strategically picked the one trans-identified female wanting to compete with the man in a non-professional category.
If you time travelled here from the past and the first thing you saw was this ad, you would think two things. One, wow, the campaign centres around youth sports. I guess literally every other problem in America has been solved.
Female youth sports. And yeah, sure, let's only solve this issue of girls being cheated out of scholarships by males who have lady feels or who magically identify as women 2 weeks before the competition or 2 years before the competition, I don't care how long, only after everything else has been solved. Because girls, right? Who cares about girls?
And two, she is not pulling off that cowboy hat.
This law makes no sense because she looks ugly in the hat. I'm so mature.
There are vanishingly few examples nationwide of trans athletes attempting to compete at all.
Why, mate? Who's stopping them? No one's banning trans people from competing. Everyone is very welcome to compete in their own sex category. Again, if you don't take this opportunity to compete in the category that's appropriate to you, then it's not about the sport, it's about the validation. It's about trolling. If a boxer, a heavyweight boxer, identifies as a featherweight, he will not be able to compete in the featherweight category because there are biological differences in body structures. But this person is still welcome to compete in the category that's appropriate for them, which is the heavyweight category. How dodgy and coward would that be if this heavyweight boxer said, "Oh, I'm not going to try at all because people are not allowing me to compete in the featherweight category"? How does that make sense? If it's about the sport, you play the sport in the category that's appropriate to you.
Even at the elite level, conversations around this aren't being handled with flat-out bans.
Well, this is not going to age well and it's going to age pretty quick.
The IOC has announced that it will set rules on a sport-by-sport basis, but working on the general principle that no athlete should be excluded from competition on the assumption of an advantage due to their gender.
Okay, which advantage due to their gender? If gender is woman and woman means anyone who identifies as a woman, then there's no advantage. You see how language is important to define advantages. The advantage is not due to gender, it's due to sex, male sex and female sex. And of course, it's in a sport-by-sport basis, because for chess, for instance, women and men should be playing together. Why not? There are no intellectual differences. There are no female brains that are inferior to male brains. But in physical sports, it's been proven that there's a difference. And that's why sports are being assessed in a sport-by-sport case, John.
And it is pretty remarkable that a trans athlete could theoretically compete in the Olympics, but not in South Dakota under-12 soccer.
Yeah, that's trans-age phobic, I have to agree. An Olympic athlete who identifies as under 12 should have the right to compete in South Dakota under 12 soccer. Why not, if that's the point you're making? So what if in the Olympics you can still do things that are unfair, and in certain regions, in certain states or cities, people are saying no, not here. The 12-year-old girls here must have a fair chance.
A sport that genuinely only exists to obliterate parents' weekends.
Oh yeah, sure, again, why bother about the children? The children, it's boring for the parents, so anything goes. Why not allow havers to be brought to the field? It's more entertaining for the parents this way, at least, if that's the level of maturity of the point you're trying to make.
And states' blunt force approach has led to absurd situations like that of Mac Beggs, who, as a Texas high schooler, wanted to wrestle boys, but was forced by state rules to wrestle girls.
Yeah, everyone can agree that's absurd. A girl who identifies as a boy wanting to wrestle the boys, that is absurd. That's correct. That's a correct assertion there.
Lawmakers tried to pass a law that would have made it impossible for athletes like him to compete, period.
Yeah, but that's equality. That's not gender discrimination. This is actually an equality policy. Testosterone doping has been banned from sports, especially elite sports and the Olympic, for ages. To any athlete. It doesn't matter if it's a woman who takes testosterone because she's transitioning into a man, whatever that means, or if it's a man who wants to enhance his athletic performance. Testosterone doping is forbidden. So, of course, after a person who's been doping with testosterone wins a competition, it's only fair that this person gets disqualified and that people who are doping with testosterone are forbidden to compete.
Do you really honestly think someone would change their entire gender just so they would win state?
No, we don't think that. We know that. We saw that in the Olympics and in other sports. Plus, what is changing your entire gender? If the mantra is that trans women don't owe you femininity, they don't need to pass, they don't need to be post-op anything.
This obviously wasn't an effort to cheat.
It doesn't matter, man. Testosterone enhances your performance artificially. If the intention was there or not, it doesn't matter. Sports have to be fair. They cannot be judged or assessed in a case-by-case what were your intentions basis, because these are cheating performance-enhancing drugs.
Oh no, honey, I didn't cheat on you with Alex because I wanted to be adulterous. I did it because it was important to me to know I still got it. It's an identity matter, see? It was not on purpose.
It doesn't mean it's not cheating.
A lot of it's been fueled by some of the same players behind the critical race theory panic.
Also known as wanting to move on from a world where race is discriminated against into a world where race doesn't matter. And not teaching 5-year-olds in schools that they were born racist because they are white.
He's basically giving people a script to repeat.
Nope. This man is putting words into people's existing unarticulated thoughts, which they aren't allowed to articulate by themselves using spoken words because they are afraid of losing their livelihood, losing their jobs, being ostracized, seeing police get to their houses because they said the wrong thing, being victims of physical violence. They are in this forced echo chamber, and someone needs to come out and say something out loud so that these people say, oh yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was crazy. This is not a script. This is a means for people in forced echo chambers to articulate themselves and know that they're not alone and know that they're not disconnected because everyone is posing as supporting something because they fear they're going to be ostracized by society, by their community, if they disagree, if they oppose. And if anything, this is this man's point of view. Or are you not feeding your viewers with a script, John, but he is?
He tweeted out that conservatives should start using the phrase trans stripper in lieu of drag queen. It has a more lurid set of connotations.
Yeah, right. This you have to disagree with because drag queens are not taking their clothes off. If they were taking their clothes off, you'd see they were males. It's interesting for a drag queen to have as much on as possible so that they create the illusion of femaleness on stage. Plus, they are not trans. Most drag queens know they are male, dressing up as female on stage for their burlesque performances. So we shouldn't be saying that drag queens are trans strippers for the mere fact that that's inaccurate.
A related tactic is arguing that the rise in kids identifying as trans is due to social contagion.
Social contagion.
That's not a tactic. That's an observable social phenomenon. Or are you going to say now that teenagers don't get influenced by social media and don't succumb to peer pressure? You can find examples as soon as you go online.
Let me just address the claim that trans kids lose all their hobbies, because I will point out that when they try to have some, like, I don't know, school sports, for example, a bunch of arsehole adults try to keep them from doing it.
No, again, everyone is welcome to participate in sports within their own sex category, as long, of course, as they're not doping with testosterone, because that would be cheating for both sexes, for men and for women. That applies for both, and all the genders they identify as. There's a series of lifestyle modifications you need to adopt if you want to be a serious athlete. You need to follow a dietary regime, maybe even refrain from drinking alcohol altogether. You can't do drugs, you need to wake up early, train hard, etc. If you really prefer stuffing your face with pork ribs every other day and getting wasted twice a week, by all means, do you. But that's incompatible with being an athlete. So that's the same for the synthetic hormones you decide to take or the social validation you want to get. If you really want to play sports, especially at a professional level, you need to make all sorts of concessions in life. Not taking a performance-enhancing drug and not competing in the opposite sex category is just one of them.
The term rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is total horseshit.
In which way is gender dysphoria not total horseshit, but rapid onset gender dysphoria total horseshit? Where are the studies proving that ROGD doesn't happen, that it's just a myth or a hoax?
That study was based on a survey of parents, not actual trans kids, and it targeted parents from organisations dedicated to opposing trans ideology.
So you admit it's an ideology then? This alone, the premise that gender is an ideology, would already prove that the findings are perfectly possible. That's point number one. Point number two. Yes, the study used the sample of parents concerned that out of the blue a child came home announcing to be trans and whose group of friends contains a bunch of other kids who came to the same conclusion at the same time. If the sample was of blue-haired polyamorous parents who consider themselves to be trans, would the study be more valid then? Would it be more neutral? And of course you have to discard from your sample the lone trans child in the entire school when you're trying to investigate a social contagion phenomenon, because of course, if that's the only child in the whole school who identifies as trans, then you can already discard for this particular child any possible peer contagion hypothesis, which is the specific scope the study has. And point number three, you know what has never happened in history? A child who out of the blue, at the age of 12 or something, came home announcing he or she is gay as in homosexual, same-sex attracted, which intriguingly coincided with 3 or 4 of his or her closest friends announcing they're gay too within the months. But if parents are saying that suddenly the whole group of friends is trans or non-binary or gender fluid, then it's worth investigating what made everyone suddenly have this self-finding, this self-realization in tandem. Because otherwise, what are you claiming? Are these children lying about being trans? Have these children not said they're trans? So are parents of children who never even brought this up randomly uniting to lie about their children claiming to be trans? While the children go, what, trans, me? Never said it. Mom and dad are cuckoo, crazy, insane. They're making stuff up. No, you said it yourself.
Actual trans kids.
You had children claiming to be trans. Suddenly, all at once. Like you have children suddenly wanting to go to a BTS concert, or had children wanting their birthday parties to be Frozen themed, or Avengers themed, or Paw Patrol themed, or whatever every single kid wants their birthday party to be themed after these days. So is it social contagion? Or is everyone genuinely trans? What's so horse-shitty about researching the answer to this question? What are you afraid of?
And to be very clear, there is ample evidence of gender variance throughout human history.
What are gender variants? If you cannot define gender, you cannot define sex, you cannot define woman or man, then what are we talking about here?
Ooh, that's quite rather intriguing. So many of these female specimens seem to have an innate aversion to doing the house chores to a man-child husband and 4 children, whilst believing this to be their ultimate goal and purpose in life. Some even like math and sports and adventure movies and video games. They must be a completely different gender. And look at these male specimens. Not all of them are complete troglodytes. Some even take pleasure in personal hygiene and are capable of feeling the full range of human emotions, including love, affection, remorse, sadness, and vulnerability. Quite a few of them enjoy musical theater and the color pink. This has got to be another gender variation too, right? They have got to have some woman alchemy blended in the mix, because these are definitely not acceptable purity levels for a man.
Is this what you believe, John? That anyone who deviates from the feminine stereotype or the masculine stereotypes are variants from woman and man, not fully woman or man, or less of a woman and less of a man?
And as far back as historians have found evidence of trans people, they found trans children.
You know why historians have found evidence of trans people? Because the ones who really claimed to be the opposite sex, as in not rewriting history to posthumously trans historical figures, the ones who claimed to be the opposite sex were men growing and living in a world where they were told to exhaustion that they weren't real men if they didn't like manly things, especially if they weren't sexually attracted to women. And since even as far back as Aristotle, around 350 BC, men were deciding that women were inferior beings so they should obey men, it's not so hard to infer that at some point in history some "I'm not like the other girls" women started claiming to be men in order to escape that oppression and be taken seriously. They might well be convinced that they were in fact men.
If I'm intelligent and I don't feel inferior and I'm not happy with my lot in life, maybe I'm somehow a man inside.
None of it is proof of transgenderism, mate. It's proof of the historical misogyny and freakification of homosexuals, which your little narrative and ideology are contributing to perpetuate. This is still society bullying you to the point of breaking your spirit and making you believe that if what I like means being woman, then I must be a woman born in the wrong body. Or the only way I could be free to have my personality in peace would have been to be born the opposite sex. So yeah, some people throughout history dressed as the opposite sex and hoped they could be seen as such and be left alone. Because it's always been more acceptable to society that if you behave outside the dress and behavior box, you must have a trapped soul, rather than acknowledging that the dress and behavior boxes are made up and enforced. And of course this also applies to children. Why wouldn't it? Children learn. And instead of learning that you can love whatever and whoever you want, they are learning that certain things are only for boys and other things are only for girls. But maybe if you like both, you're some sort of hybrid. With the added factor that some parents would rather have a trans daughter than a gay son, also known as trans the gay away, a new skin for the old-time garden variety conversion therapy, so plainly homophobic parents. Parents with Munchausen by proxy, narcissistic parents, and now, more and more, really confused parents. Parents in an ideological echo chamber, and parents who don't even know what's going on because the school is keeping this discussion from them. Children learn that certain things are for boys and other things are for girls, and they pick a category, boy or girl, based on the things they like. But it's not boy or girl that's a social construct, honey. The social construct is things for boys and things for girls. No male child would ever class himself as a girl if he hadn't learned that the frilly tutus he likes are girls' clothes. No little boy was born and then at the age of 3 has spontaneously said, I actually understand myself to be a girl, to the surprise of all who have never mentioned gender to this boy. Based on what? Has anyone ever asked these children? Why do you think you're a girl? What makes you think you're a girl? What is a girl? To see what they say. Because they're gonna say, because my mom says I'm a girl, because I like girly things, because I dance to Disney's Frozen, because I like pink and unicorns, because I like to play with my sister's toys and wear my sister's clothes. Imagine the child hasn't said anything. Imagine we had to rely on a parent's or a teacher's or a doctor's diagnosis. What's the difference between a 5-year-old trans girl and a 5-year-old boy who likes exactly the same things? How can you tell one of them is a trans girl and the other is a boy? If your only answer is because the child says so, then you have as much evidence of the existence of transgender children as you have evidence of the existence of trans pirate children, trans monster children, trans dinosaur children, trans princess children, and so on.
Right after their boxes, let the boxes go and be yourself.
When you look at a chart of left-handedness among Americans over the 20th century, you see a massive spike when we stopped forcing kids to write with their right hand. It means people were free to be who they fucking were.
No, wait. That's rich. So, transing children into being right-handed stopped, and they could be left-handed in peace, and your argument is pro-trans? I'm left-handed myself, buddy, and let me tell you, we don't identify as left-handed. It's not our identity. It's observable in the brain. It's a fully physiological characteristic. If no one tells you which hand to use, left-handed people will grow up using the left one. If you don't tell children that certain things are for boys and other things are for girls, boy things and girl things, they will grow up doing their bloody thing without thinking that they are or have to be trans for that. In a society fully removed from gender roles and gender stereotypes, there are absolutely no trans children, because trans is fully based on the roles and stereotypes. It needs the roles and stereotypes to exist. Without the roles and stereotypes, trans has nothing. Unless you're an autogynephile. Of course, if you're an autogynephile, all you need is the side of a female body. But again, you still need the materiality of the female body and the understanding that it's female, unlike yours. But children aren't autogynephiles. So yeah, just like left-handed children are only demonic when some crazy zealotty adult said so, gender role non-conforming children are only trans when some crazy zealotty adult said so. Not doing so well so far, John. What else you got?
That some young people are just exploring their gender identity. How exactly is that a bad thing? Who the fuck are they hurting?
Themselves, for a start. They're hurting themselves. Because even those who aren't being pumped with harmful drugs that are being sold to them as quote-unquote harmless and quote-unquote reversible, when in fact they cause irreversible damage to the body, and let's not even talk about surgery, they are being sold a lie. A false coping mechanism for the issues they may have or be experiencing that should be sorted in a different way. Because there's nothing wrong with being yourself. The real self. The self that doesn't need to be modified to conform to society, that tells you that if you like certain things, then you were born in the wrong body. Because people who like these things have a soul that belongs to a different quote-unquote gender. How can you expect to live a life expecting everyone else to indulge you in your self-image? It's never gonna happen. You're never gonna find happiness this way. Because this is self-image. It's a fantasy in your head. It's much healthier and makes so much more sense to affirm these children and teens who are exploring their gender identity by saying, yes, you are valid. For liking all these things and being who you are as the girl you materially are, as the boy you materially are, by birth. There's nothing wrong with your body. There's nothing wrong with your brain or with your soul for liking these things that society says should only be liked by people of the opposite sex. rather than saying, oh, you were born in the wrong body and you're only going to be happy if you change everything about you, if you medicate yourself, if you undergo surgery, or if everyone else stops seeing you as the biological sex you are and starts indulging you in the self-image you have, that you learn to have about yourself. Because denying the self-image that you have is gonna make you sad, is gonna make you depressed. This doesn't help anyone. This doesn't protect anyone. This is the worst possible strategy to go about life. Sheltering children from reality into adults who cannot deal with reality, who cannot cope with reality.
I will not let a board full of people who barely represent me tell me who I am and what I can do. Grow up and fix your behavior.
Said every obnoxious teenager ever.
I have used these bathrooms repeatedly alongside trans people and have never once felt threatened.
Oh, Becky here has never felt threatened. This just proves that this never happens to anyone, ever. Using Becky's rhetoric here that John Oliver carefully selected to make his point, I've just had a sandwich 15 minutes ago. This proves that world hunger is a hoax.
You've embarrassed yourselves, Gardner, and the state of Kansas for your lack of knowledge in sex and gender studies.
Yeah, and you also think that adults embarrass themselves for not being able to use Snapchat or TikTok. Not a good argument.
Maybe the biggest and most dangerous area of ignorance surrounds the concept of gender-affirming care.
Ooh, dangerous ignorance. What is being ignored, John? What are the opposers getting wrong about what you call gender-affirming care? Enlighten them. Go on.
4 states have enacted bans or restrictions on youth access to it.
Access to what, I wonder? What is it that a hospital provides that these children cannot access that is detrimental to their well-being, health, or even life?
And they have been fueled by a lack of basic knowledge about what gender-affirming care actually consists of.
Dangerous ignorance, a lack of basic knowledge. Hurry, I'm anxious now to hear what this transgender-affirming care is that opposers are so ignorant about. The care that hospitals are providing or should be providing to youth, according to you.
That hospitals providing gender-affirming care to youth.
This is what John Oliver calls ignorance. That's the example he picks. He shows this guy giving an example of how messed up the gender-affirming care is, saying that if a young girl felt dysphoric about her fingers and went to the doctor wanting to chop them off, the doctor would be highly concerned about the child's mental health and would refuse to sever a perfectly functioning body part. But when the girl claims to be dysphoric about her ovaries, then the doctors promptly welcome the surgery and compliment her for her rightness and bravery. And his only point against this rhetoric, his only point of defense is
that no one in this country has ever been able to have one conversation with a doctor without first discussing insurance, to the notion of a young child using the term doc.
Is this what you have to say? So the example can only be valid if it portrays the exact dialogue that happens in the doctor's practice. Did the doctor mention insurance? Was it before or after the patient explained the reason for the appointment? Did the receptionist make the patient fill out any sort of form before the patient got in? Did they greet the patient upon arrival? Was the slang used in the conversation current? We need to get at the bottom of this or we'll be unable to understand the situation. This is the best counter-argument you can come up with, seriously. This also shows that you have no idea of what you're talking about, because if you did, you would have at least used the opportunity you totally missed to say that if anything, the scenario is unrealistic, because no doctor who's pro-affirming surgery would have misgendered the child. I mean, at least not in front of her, or drama and scandal would ensue.
We do need to cut your uterus out as soon as possible. Let's get this young lady over to the operating room.
There, I did your job for you. And for your appallingly incompetent staff. You're welcome.
But to hear some tell it as soon as a child declares themselves trans, there is an immediate, irreversible surgical decision undertaken, and there just isn't.
No, of course not. First, there are years, or even just months, depending on how old the child is, of gaslighting this child into believing that they're a soul trapped in the wrong body, like a Twilight Zone character. And this mental indoctrination alone will screw these children for the rest of their life because they are in formative years, not only physically but psychologically, and this is what they're learning about the reality of life. But mainly, they're going to be put on puberty blockers, which are not reversible. Just read the actual drug leaflet.
So let's break down exactly what gender-affirming care consists of.
Oh, finally, can't wait.
Because in younger children, it can mean nothing more than a social transition, like calling them by a new name or giving them a new haircut or clothing or...
You don't need to be a separate sex, a different sex, or quote-unquote gender to be or do any of these things. To change your name, or to change your haircut, or to wear whatever the hell you wanna wear.
Or providing them with psychological or behavioural supports, because behavioural supports...
Behavioral support? Excuse me? How creepy is that? Behavioral support is a form of applied behavior analysis that uses a behavior management system to understand what maintains an individual's challenging behavior and how to change it. Keyword, change it. And that's for dysfunctional behaviors or dangerous behaviors. Behaviors that harm oneself or others, that prevent oneself from functioning well and in a healthy way in society. A boy who's behaving in a way that you consider to be a girl's behavior is not dysfunctional nor dangerous. It's just a boy. And he doesn't need behavioral support. It's not support. This is called conversion therapy. That's conversion therapy. And it's great that it's banned because conversion therapy is cruelty. It's psychological violence. But please carry on, because changing a child's haircut is not being forbidden or being performed in hospitals.
To be very clear, prepubescent children are not eligible for medical interventions.
Puberty blockers need to be taken before puberty has fully occurred, John. Children certainly cannot be post-pubescent to be eligible.
At the onset of puberty, an adolescent and their family might consider puberty blockers, hormones that delay puberty.
First off, if you stress and their family, you're clearly unfamiliar with the internet groomers in the private market or cash-grabbing unregulated pharmacies selling those puberty blockers online to children who bite on this lie in secret from their parents. And second, puberty blockers are meant to be taken when a child starts precocious puberty. That's around the age of 9, 8, or even younger. They're designed and supposed to be used in accordance with the biological clock, not with the legal system. That is, a person who starts puberty at the regular, healthy, and expected time should not have the process interrupted just because it may take up to 5 years to be legally eligible to take hormones.
If that treatment is suspended, then puberty will resume, meaning that this is reversible.
And zero side effects as well, because these people can just identify as not having any side effects. So, yeah, maybe that's how it works. The world according to John Oliver.
The next potential medical intervention is usually hormone therapy, which boosts levels of testosterone or estrogen.
Boosts. What else can we boost the levels of in our body? Maybe we can boost our levels of sodium, or copper, or LDL. Anything goes, really. Boosting is always a good thing, right? Right?
Opponents of gender-affirming care make a lot of alarmist claims about hormone therapy.
Ooh, wow, what sort of outlandish claims can these people be making?
From saying that it's experimental, which it is not.
No, he's right though. It's totally not experimental. It's been proven that it's harmful.
To arguing that it sterilizes people. And look.
What?
To arguing that it sterilizes people.
So it doesn't sterilize people?
For some, in specific situations, there can be risks to fertility, but for...
It's just for some people. What are you guys worried about? Totally alarmist claims.
But for others, the effect is anticipated to be reversible if the medication is discontinued.
Oh yeah, some people will definitely be sterilized, but some others may not be if they stop taking these drugs on time. So completely safe. As long as you don't do it.
But there is definitely an informed decision to be made there.
No, John, the decision cannot be informed. Firstly, because most of these people are children under the age of consent, and they don't understand the full implications of it, or are too young to make the final choice about these matters, like whether they want children, with no chance of changing their mind in the future. Second, because most of these parents are relying on doctors who have a financial agenda, who have a vested interest in keeping people from a very early age as lifetime patients, consuming these drugs forever, and developing all the collateral damage. And third, because people like you keep saying that they can reverse this at any time if only they just stopped. Oh, don't stop taking testosterone. It's totally fine and safe. But when you get any complication, then just stop and everything's gonna go back to normal. Just like when you stop smoking cigarettes, after a lifetime of smoking, you will reverse emphysema. They cannot be informed if people like you keep spreading misinformation.
And you will notice that none of what I've mentioned so far is surgery. But when it does come to that, some teens may be eligible, for instance, for top surgery or chest masculinization.
Otherwise known as elective mastectomies. Otherwise known as the mutilation of perfectly healthy and functional parts of a woman's body. Also, what do you mean by some teens may be eligible? This is cosmetic surgery. Anyone who doesn't have heart problems or an allergy to anesthetics is eligible, as long as they can say yes, even if they don't understand what they're saying yes to.
You should know, not only is that pretty rare...
Has your production team, your writing team, even bothered Googling top surgery? Because it's not rare, mate. It's everywhere on social media. It's being advertised as something to be pursued if you want to look more masculine. This is not very secretive and very specific, only being clinically recommended to a very tiny portion of the population with a very specific problem.
Like all of this would only happen after a team of medical professionals.
A bunch of Nick Riveras from The Simpsons who have a vested interest in making money out of this. Because, as you say it yourself,
that is also incredibly expensive.
Oh wow, surgery is expensive. All surgeries are expensive, John. The elective cosmetic ones as these, and the vital urgent ones that the patient may die if he or she doesn't undergo, the ones you aren't defending. No one dies from not having gender-affirming surgery, unless they deliberately choose to and take action towards, if you catch my drift. But yeah, carry on. This only happens after a team of medical professionals...
Only happen after a team of medical professionals discussed all of its risks and benefits with their patient and their patient's parent or guardian.
And the parents or guardians being able to sign off on this means nothing as well, because these may be parents wanting to trans the gay away of their children, or their parents who are misinformed by people like you, emotionally blackmailed into believing that the only options are a dead son or an alive trans daughter. Being coerced to consent is not consenting, in spite of what the hospital's legal team will point out after the harm is done.
No kid is casually dropping into an operating room because they just decided to get their uterus removed.
No one said the kid is casually entering. You're the one making the scenario up right now, to divert attention from the fact that children as young as 13 are getting double mastectomies, and that even many of those who undergo this whole careful and long scenario you're describing come to regret it.
The very notion that the state would suddenly interfere in any of this is understandably infuriating for both trans kids and their parents.
Don't forget Big Pharma, John. Big Pharma is the most infuriated stakeholder of them all.
Will nobody think of Big Pharma?
This is not one of those instances where it is okay to butt into someone's care for their child.
So you agree there are instances where it is okay to butt into someone's care for their child.
Do you need help, Pigpen? Blink your filthy eyes if you need help, Pigpen.
Ugh. How much are people paid to laugh at this? Or was the scan left added in post-production? It's not important. He's only pulling a look over there move to distract us from the S-bomb he's about to drop.
So the benefits of providing care are immense.
And yet, you're 20 minutes into your monologue and you couldn't provide one. Apart from, if you don't let them do it, teens bullied into thinking they were born in the wrong body will throw a tantrum, and God forbid not indulging the almighty teens in their every whim.
The risks of withholding it are dire. A survey of around 28,000 trans people found that of those who wanted hormone therapy and didn't receive it, 58% reported suicidal thoughts in a given year.
Hey John, remember exactly 10 minutes ago when you said that the research about rapid onset gender dysphoria was biased because it only took into consideration the inputs of parents of children who suddenly identify as trans? How is this research not biased when it doesn't have peer reviews, when it's so quick to brush off any further correlation for these suicidal thoughts? Where is the research showing that these thoughts have completely disappeared after hormones were taken? And the 10-year follow-up, by the way. How long after starting to take hormones did the thoughts stop? Was it immediately? 3 months in? A week in? What were the physical perceptions about themselves that changed? Did these thoughts stop even though they were still legally considered their actual sex? Were they all automatically considered to be the opposite sex by society? How did the other 42% who didn't have these thoughts in the first place cope? Is it just thoughts, or did they carry it through? If they did carry it through, 58% is a lot of people. Where are all these bodies?
Which is why the 3 major professional associations of child and adolescent doctors, psychologists and psychiatrists have endorsed gender-affirming care.
Every business person endorses their own products. It's not surprising that the people who are going to profit from it are endorsing it.
And you may have seen or heard from a small subset of people who detransition.
Yeah, just like you hear about people quitting Scientology or multi-level marketing pyramid schemes, they're always vilified by their cults.
But it is worth knowing such cases are rare and highly individualized.
Vilification initiated.
What does that mean, highly individualized? Is transing not rare or highly individualized? What is it then, a mass phenomenon? And only those who went out have some sort of problem? Don't these people count as voices just as much? Aren't they human beings? Or are you going to say that they're just a margin of error that should be brushed under the rug?
Studies show an average of just 2% of people who transition express regret, and that the vast majority of those who have opted to detransition did so not because of changes in their gender identity, but due to external factors such as stigma and lack of social support. And look,
what's stigma? Trans people are literally everywhere. Politics, arts, top brand ads, award ceremonies, beauty pageants, keynote stages, audiences with the President of the United States. What stigma do trans people suddenly face after surgery that they didn't think they already faced pre-op? And what you call social support is, in reality speak, compliance with a distorted self-image. You don't say that social support to anorexic girls is to affirm those squalid 14-year-olds as fat. The social support operated trans people expect comes from the lie they were sold, that all their problems will be solved with transition, and that once they transition, they genuinely become the opposite sex. Did you hear any detransitioner? People detransition because they realize they were deceived, that they'll never be the opposite sex. Not because society doesn't support them, but because it is materially impossible. And when they start to voice their questioning, they are bullied by the trans community itself, because a cult will always discredit any questioning of its dogma. Life does not get easier after you chop your bits off and or cause an imbalance in your healthy levels of hormones by pumping yourself with synthetic meds. How much social support are you giving these people by dismissing their stories as very rare and it only happens because it's too hard to be trans? There used to be a stigma about homosexual people, and none of them went back to being straight because it was too hard to keep being attracted to people of the same sex. There still is, in many countries, in many regions of liberal countries, a stigma against same-sex attracted people. And they may lie to their family and live under a cloak of conformity to survive, but they know who they are. And as soon as they're given the chance, they come out and live authentically. That's not what's happening with detransitioners. What an evil strategy to paint this picture to your oblivious audience that detransitioners are choosing to get back in the closet. Detransitioners are not trans people going back in the closet. They're people who regret surgery, who state they were pressured into surgery, who realize they didn't know what they were doing, that their consent was not informed. And people who are still confused about the notion of quote-unquote gender and their self-image, in cognitive dissonance with what they learned from an early age about what having their personality in relation to their biological sex means.
I could just let you watch this boy talk about what it felt like to have someone actually see him for who he was.
Sure, cue you another poster child of true self.
Trademark.
Let's see what this one's struggle was.
Dylan explained how as early as 4th grade he'd had confusing feelings that stretched on until his teenage years.
I really wanted to cut my hair.
You do not need to be a man to cut your hair. Also, fun fact, men can have long hair too. Just because society has conventions that men generally have short hair and women generally have long hair, it doesn't mean that men are biologically more prone to liking short hair and women are biologically more prone to liking long hair. Therefore, if you like short hair, it must mean that the soul that inhabits your body has got to be male.
Like really bad. And so when I did that, that felt really good.
Yeah, and when I dyed my hair blonde, I felt really good as well. Does this mean I'm trans white? That I'm no longer my ethnicity?
And then I held the door for somebody and they said, "Thank you, sir." And I was like, oh yeah, that, yeah.
Babes, I'm going to be honest with you. I never wanted to be a man. I never wished there was a man. But given the choice between thank you, young lady, thank you, little lady, and thank you, sir, I would have picked thank you, sir. Just because it does feel much better, of course. Thank you, Captain, even better. Or thank you, boss. How cool would it be if people treated me as boss?
That's incredible. For some, a haircut is just a routine activity, but for a trans kid, it can be a life-changing experience.
Am I a real boy? No, Pinocchio.
Your life is not going to change after you cut your hair. You're going to be the same person of the same biological sex with a different haircut. Stop lying to children.
Remember Kai from earlier? She's now 11 years old, and she went to the Texas state legislature last year to speak out against bills that would ban doctors and parents from providing gender-affirming care to young people.
Oh yeah, the prop kid who was abused for years by homophobic mom and dad for liking things that they considered to be girl things. The same homophobic mom and dad who live in a religious homophobic community that's eager to judge neighbors. The kid whose salvation from physical violence was psychological violence when mom found out she could gaslight him and herself into believing he's actually a girl, thus coming out as a stunning and brave icon instead of the gossip stock of her homophobic neighborhood. She couldn't break his spirit into acting more masculine, so she broke his spirit into believing he's a girl. Yeah, I remember that kid. This child is now brainwashed into believing that the world is against him, that everybody hates him, and that he's being denied quote-unquote care, which is not care, it's further mutilation. He's being brainwashed into believing it's what he needs. What's more, he's being led to fight for the green light on this procedure, for himself and for others. And it's not even the poor child's fault. This poor child is the product of his parents' pathological narcissism.
I love ballet, math, science, and geology.
And you don't need to be a girl to do or like any of these things.
I spend my free time with my cats, chickens, FaceTiming my friends, and dreaming of when I will finally meet Dolly Parton.
Ugh. Can the parents be any more obnoxious? Coaching the child to say this.
And dreaming of when I will finally meet Dolly Parton.
Said no child ever unprompted, uncoached, with all this Little Miss Sunshine affections.
God made me. God loves me for who I am, and God does not make mistakes.
That's some serious Olympic level of doublethink. God doesn't make mistakes. I was born in the wrong body. Therefore, being born in the wrong body is not a mistake. What is it then, buddy? Did God just prank you for the lols then? If God did it on purpose? For those who do believe in God, that's gotta be an extra step in mental gymnastics, justifying that in your head. God doesn't make mistakes. I was born in the wrong body. That was not a God's mistake. And that's why I'm here in court demanding I get surgery and meds to totally modify my body. Because I got the wrong one. From God, who doesn't make mistakes. Give me surgery and meds. Now, who in court had mentioned God to begin with? Why are you bringing up religion to this? What's it got to do with any of it? You know what's not a mistake? Liking ballet and liking Dolly Parton as a boy. Being born as a perfectly healthy boy and liking things that your mom and dad say are for girls only. That's not a mistake. The way you were born was not a mistake. Your personality is not a mistake. The mistake is adults looking at you and saying that you were born in the wrong body, that you are transgender because you are a girl trapped in a boy's body. This is the mistake. This is cruelty. They're being cruel to you. They're being violent. They're being psychologically violent to you for a profit and for attention. And because they said they are homophobic. And with puberty blockers and hormones and surgery, pretty soon there's gonna be physical cruelty against you as well. God has nothing to do with this.
While opponents of trans rights will say that these kids are either a menace...
Who on earth is saying that?
...or brainwashed...
No. An 11-year-old who dreams of meeting Dolly Parton or a teenager who believes that cutting her hair will transform her into a boy are definitely not brainwashed. No, not at all.
Their defenders will often gravitate towards the same sad statistics that I've shown you tonight of depression and suicide. And
of course, how else are we going to convince unsuspecting parents that they need to put their children on lifetime meds and pay for unnecessary surgery?
While that is understandable on one level, it's the most devastating harm that can be inflicted by these bills.
Oh yeah, devastating. God forbid children learn to accept and love themselves for who they really are, and that adults stop being bigots imposing gender stereotypes upon their children. Totally not devastating harm that can be inflicted by these bills, though. Girls being cheated out of their scholarships and safety in sports, some children being sterilized, a world with backwards gender stereotypes, the destruction of children's safeguarding barriers.
Trans people are not by default unhappier or more prone to suffering than everyone else. That is something that we are putting on them.
So just stop using the S-bomb argument. Stop putting it on them. You didn't even stop to breathe between your two very contradictory statements.
That boy that you just saw,
sure,
who is suing his state AG, will point out, he has got other teenage boy stuff going on too.
What is it? One can't help but wonder.
I shouldn't have to sue the state of Arkansas because they are trying to tell me how I can and can't live.
It's not them telling you how you can or cannot live. It's people saying that to live the way you want to live, you must be male, you must be a boy, you must transition into a boy, whatever that means. These are the people who are hindering your freedom to live unbothered and have your personality without having to change your body or change everyone's perception of your sex.
All the kids we've seen tonight shouldn't need to be activists.
Correct. They should be able to move on with their lives without adults telling them that they were born in the wrong body, without adults indoctrinating them to obsess about getting access to spaces for the people of the opposite sex because they don't conform to the gender stereotypes that society keeps imposing on men and women, without adults teaching them that man or woman is not a biological characteristic but a personality.
They should get to dress how they want, go to the right bathroom for them, and play the sports they want to play.
Yes! They should dress as they want, without any adult saying that if they choose to dress a certain way, then they must be put on meds. They should use the right bathroom, which is the one for their biological sex, and they're welcome to play any sports in their own sex category. And what should change is the perception that if a boy likes pink dresses and long hair, then he doesn't belong in the male toilet. What should change is the notion that if a girl doesn't like pink dresses and long hair, then she's not fully a girl. What should change is moms describing their sons as all boy because they like football, dinosaurs, and climbing trees, as if a boy who doesn't like one or some of these things is less of a boy. What should change is saying that girls are sugar, spice, and everything nice, and if they like healthy, sporty adventures, then they are a tomboy.
It is worth remembering that progress, while not always linear, is always possible.
So hopefully at some point there will be progress in society to allow children to just be children and not tell them that they are the opposite sex just because they like certain things that are so backwardly associated with the personalities, capacities, and roles of men and women in society.
And never, ever going back to a point where anyone feels that if they appear on TV, they have to hide behind a fucking plant.
Which has never been the case for trans-identified people. And which thankfully has no longer been the case for homosexual people. But it may revert to it if the trans ideology keeps pushing the dogma that homosexuality either doesn't exist...
Homosexuality doesn't really exist because it can only exist in a binary.
Or it's just transphobia.